So, if you've been paying close attention, I can't imagine why you would be, but if you have been paying close attention, you have been aware over the past month and a half or so, I have been persecuting the Ayn Rand Institute, specifically Yaron Brook, the Grand Poobah, the chief cook and bottle washer of the Ayn Rand Institute. I have been persecuting the Ayn Rand Institute for its failure to address the Planned Parenthood abortion videos. The question racing to your mind right now might be, why should they? We'll get to that, but it's a matter of obvious importance for the Ayn Rand Institute to defend abortion right now, since abortion is a key plank in their platform. Inappropriate, in my opinion, really out of place, a terrible mistake in the philosophical framework that Ayn Rand put together, but this is what the Ayn Rand Institute is charged with doing, is defending the structure no matter how absurd, and they're not doing it. We'll get to it. We'll talk about why. But the other form this question would come in as it races to the uppermost reaches of your mind is, why should they respond to you, Greg Swan? Well, they don't need to respond to me. They have no reason to respond to me. They have no need to respond to me directly. I am just drawing attention to the fact that they are failing to do as they should. Not for me, not in my behalf, not for my benefit, not to respond to me, but to buttress their own argument in the intellectual marketplace and to service their clientele, the people who are paying them to buttress that argument in the intellectual marketplace. They don't need to respond to me. They need to respond to the people who are paying them, and they're not doing it. Plausibly, because the people who are paying them not to respond. How absurd is that? No one stays here by faking reality in any manner, whatever. And that's what's really going on, and that's the fun that I'm having with them, is understanding the strategic predispositions of a cautious tyranny and playing into those predispositions to rob them of their only available recourses in a crisis like this. They have two ways of addressing this, practically speaking. One is to try to shout it down, and the other is to go silent and wait for it to go away. And in pointing out that they have gone silent and are waiting for this to go away, I have robbed them of that recourse. They are publicly exposed as anti-intellectual, unintellectual, can't hit their asses with both hands, doofus, idiot, insult to intellectuality, pretend think tank minions. I've exposed them as completely morally and intellectually bankrupt, but in so doing, I've robbed them of the ability to go for the harangue move instead, the vituperative move instead. They had an opportunity early on to take one of many tacks, each one of which I took away from them by pointing them out, by pointing out the hypocrisy, by pointing out the intellectual and moral corruption that would be required to make that move. We saw Reason Magazine do it almost immediately after the first Planned Parenthood video. Reason Magazine comes out with their great utilitarian defense of the medical research that's being done with dead babies. And so the next obvious move from there is to point out that chicken fried dead baby thighs are better than KFC, and the carbon tax has already been paid on that meat. That's one thing. Or to talk about the brand new Pond's cold cream that's enriched with real Jew fat. Because if you can profit on murder, there's no limit to the amount of profit you can seek from murder. The Ayn Rand Institute, to its credit, did not take that disgusting utilitarian move. The other move that was readily available to them at first was either to attack the messenger, which of course is what Planned Parenthood is doing by way of congressional investigations. There are congressional investigations into the Planned Parenthood videos, not investigations into what is actually obviously legal infanticide by our current corrupt definitions. No, we're not investigating that. No, we're investigating the circumstances under which the videos were made, because the most important thing to do is to shoot the messenger. That was another attack that the Ayn Rand Institute could have taken that they didn't. Again, to their credit, they didn't go out of their way to shoot the messenger. There was a censorship angle early on in the story that they could have jumped on in order to pretend to take the moral high ground while evading the issue altogether. They didn't do that. That one's already over. That censorship issue is already gone. What they have done is nothing. What they have done is blank out. What they have done is pretend that this issue will go away if they pretend to ignore it. This is faking reality in obvious and disgusting ways, and I have been gracious enough to point it out every step of the way, because I know how cautious incandescents in particular respond to this sort of scandal, and I have gone out of my way to make it worse for them, day by day, several times a day, every day. I have gone out of my way to make it worse for them, to point out the corruption and the hypocrisy, to point out the intellectual bankruptcy, to point out the fear and cowardice, to point out the evasion, to point out the unbelievable self-destruction that the Ayn Rand Institute has been a party to, but the self-destruction that they are actually engaged in as they evade this issue day after day after day. So they don't have any need to respond to me. I'm doing everything I can to make it impossible for them to respond to me or to anyone, but in fact, they actually do have to take this issue on. They have to face up to it. They have to address it, not for my sake, not for my benefit, not to palliate or satiate me, not as a way of getting me off their back. That will not work. I will not get off their back. I've pounced on, and I will stay latched on to their neck until I get results one way or another. I will win no matter what. I said so 2 or 3 weeks ago. I pointed out how I will win any which way this turns out. I will win in this contretemps, in this conflict. But the Ayn Rand Institute needs to address this issue in depth, in detail, and the sooner the better, or it will have destroyed itself over it. And the reasons that it needs to take on these Planned Parenthood videos and take on its own evil, corrupt, factually risible, ridiculous abortion argument and correct that argument is this is the only way they will save their sinking ship. The first defect that they need to address is simply that anti-objectivity, that anti-factual basis of the claims that they make about intrauterine infanticide. These are all factually incorrect, obviously factually incorrect. No one has any doubt about what's going on. You're thinking about getting an abortion. Why would you be thinking about getting an abortion? Because I'm pregnant. Oh, that's interesting. Pregnant with what? Pregnant with what? A piece of protoplasm? Clump of cells? Some random toenail clippings that somehow got stuck up inside your body? That's what you're aborting? No, you're pregnant with what? You're pregnant with a baby. You are killing your own baby. This is factually obvious. No one doubts it. The objectivist claims about a piece of protoplasm are completely anti-factual, anti-objective, and therefore they undermine the entire structure of objectivity upon which Ayn Rand's philosophy is putatively built. The abortion argument is at war with the rest of Ayn Rand's argument. Not to say that Ayn Rand's argument is any good otherwise, but to the extent that it can be defended at all, it is undermined by this abortion argument because the abortion argument is anti-reality, is anti-objective, it is anti-fact. It is at war with factual reality. And therefore, the Ayn Rand Institute needs to renounce it. They need to renounce that position because it's at war with reality. Worse, their abortion argument is essentially anti-morality. It is a utilitarian argument. It is a hit-and-run argument. The argument says, I'm driving too fast, late at night, poor light, hit something. Could have been a man, could have been a dog, could have been a scarecrow. Don't know what I hit, but I hit something, and I just kept driving. And that by itself is morally repugnant because you may well have killed a man, you may well have killed a dog. And you need to stop and see what you can do to amend that atrocity, to try to fix that, to try to make it better, to make it as much better as you can. It's already awful. You need to make it less awful. That's your moral obligation, and you don't even know what it was you hit. What are you pregnant with? Oh, wait, you know what that is, and you know that it's a real existent, and you know that it's a real organism, and you know that it is your own genetic offspring. It is a genetic Homo sapiens that is composed half of your DNA and half of your lover's DNA. It is a unique specimen of genetic Homo sapienity, a unique specimen of humanity writ large, and you are contemplating killing it as an expediency on the advice of Ayn Rand and the Ayn Rand Institute, who are encouraging you to make a viciously anti-moral choice on the basis of a vicious, utilitarian hit-and-run argument. And therefore they need to renounce that too. The act of engaging in an intrauterine infanticide, killing your own child, advocating your lover killing your child, advocating a friend or family member killing the child, financing this, performing it, being instrumentally involved in an abortion is self-destructive, is destructive to your ongoing self-adoration, your self-adoration in the moment while you're involved in making these choices and enduringly thereafter. You will never recover from having been instrumentally involved in an abortion. The remorse and regret from that event will revisit itself. Your conscious memories from now on, unbidden, unchosen, definitely undesired, and yet those memories will come back to you again and again and again. You will never escape this remorse. And therefore it is obviously anti-egoistic, it is obviously self-destructive, it is to be avoided, and this is something that the Ayn Rand Institute should be pointing out. Not only is intrauterine infanticide self-destructive, there is no circumstance in which it is self-constructive, and so it is not sufficient to denounce it merely for being self-destructive, but it's necessary at the same time to point out that intrauterine infanticide is anti-egoism as such. It is opposed to the ideals of egoism, the ideals that I uphold here at the Church of Splendor week after week after week, the idea of self-adoration, to craft and burnish an image of yourself that you can worship without reservation, without remorse, without regret, without doubt, without pain, without fear or pity, without self-deception, without making false claims about yourself. That your every truthful statement about yourself is a statement of admiration, and your admiration is earned and deserved by your past virtuous actions, and every goal and motive in your life is devoted to effecting that same sort of virtue now and enduringly in the future from now on. That your goal and motive in making your choices is to choose admirably in every circumstance, to make every choice that you make the admirable choice. And if you do that, you will love your life enduringly. You will love your whole life for your whole life. And if you do anything else, you will hate that part of your life forevermore. Every time it comes back to your conscious attention unbidden, you will hate that part of your life. And accordingly, to uphold the argument of intrauterine infanticide, to argue for abortion, whether or not you're instrumentally involved in an actual abortion, to uphold it as a philosophical doctrine is necessarily anti-egoism, because you are advocating taking enduringly self-destructive acts. Not necessarily directly yourself, although that could happen too, but you are championing the idea for other people, championing the idea of self-destruction, enduring lifelong self-destruction for other people. You are making an anti-egoistic argument, viciously anti-egoistic argument, all of which leads to an anti-egoistic frame of mind going forward. That you treat humanity as a temporary expediency, something that can be dispensed with just by driving away on it, like that thing that you hit with your car. You just put the pedal to the metal and race away, and you leave your past behind you. This is not true. This is not true. This is false. Every choice you make is with you forever, potentially. You don't know which of your choices are going to recall themselves to your attention from now on, but potentially any one of them could. Every choice you make is made forever. The speed of life, events begin, but they never end. They never end. And so to make an argument about the utilitarian justification of the hit-and-run morality advocated by Ayn Rand and the Ayn Rand Institute in their argument for abortion, that sort of temporaneity, how do you say it? Temporaneity will infect your thinking every which way, and you will regard choices as being temporarily consequential when they're almost always permanently consequential. And this is anti-egoistic also. Treating genetic Homo sapiens as if they were vermin essentially makes you anti-future. This is another thing that the Ayn Rand Institute needs to address, is that their argument for abortion undermines the future. It undermines the individual person's faith in, belief in, and commitment to the future. And the obvious reason for this is that we believe in the future because of our children and grandchildren, that we invest in the future through our children and grandchildren. The religious people want to argue that atheists become nihilists because they don't believe in the afterlife. Well, I don't really think anybody believes in the afterlife. Certainly anyone who believed that the afterlife would be an infinite paradise and that everything else by comparison is mere hell would self-annihilate instantly in order to gain access to that paradise. No one believes in the paradisical afterlife. Everyone believes that the future will be better for the people that they're leaving behind. They know they're going to die. They have every good reason to believe that they'll be dead forever, that there will be nothing that happens after death. But even if there is, they won't have any impact on this life. They understand that there are no influential ghosts, again, despite all the stupid things we say. They know they will have no influence on this life, and therefore, why would they invest any influence in this life? And yet they do. That's what people do in the last halves of their lives. People with children spend the last half of their lives setting up their children, setting up their futures, setting up their grandchildren's futures. And the reason for this is because they believe in the future. And that commitment that human beings are vermin and that the best human being is a dead human being, that we are happiest when we're dead and that everybody really wants to be dead, and that the most moral thing that you can do when you've spawned your own offspring is to kill it instantly, because that's what the baby really wants, is to be dead. When we regard humanity as vermin, we destroy our commitment to the future. And accordingly, to be pro-abortion is to be anti-future. This is something the Ayn Rand Institute needs to answer for. I would say a much more serious circumstance is the fact that the Ayn Rand Institute is complicit in Marxist genocide. Abortion, intrauterine infanticide is of a piece with the Marxist genocide that has been going on in the Western world since 1917. That Marxism is a genocidal movement, it's a cautious tyranny, and it's not actually pursuing genocide. Genocide is a secondary consequence of every cautious tyranny. But Marxism is devoted to the eradication, essentially the eradication of rebellion, of noncompliance, but ultimately the eradication of everyone. And one of the key ways they have of achieving that genocide is by way of abortion. The Ayn Rand Institute's arguments for abortion are functionally identical to the Marxist arguments for abortion, except that the Marxists, in their arguments for abortion, are putatively, plausibly, they claim to be eugenic. In other words, they're attempting to clean the gene pool by removing the offspring of the people who are least fit to successfully bring their children to adulthood. That's the claim that the Marxists make about abortion. And the actual real-life existential consequences of the Ayn Rand Institute's arguments for abortion have been fundamentally dysgenic. That they have killed the best and the brightest babies. They have killed the best among us, in the name of the best among us, in the name of the best within you. This is the hot gas that Ayn Rand likes to fill young people with to convince them that they are great moral exemplars for having read a book and not done anything at all with their lives. But she makes a virtue, she makes a sacrament of intrauterine infanticide. She makes a sacrament, a moral sacrament of abortion, and in consequence, thousands upon thousands of really bright young people, a whole lot of them highly cautious, INTJ high Cs. Those are the people who are attracted to Ayn Rand's philosophy. Those are the people who stick with it. A whole lot of those kids killed their children, committed a vicious moral atrocity from which they've never recovered. Invested their lives in one temporary and fungible activity after the next without ever making anything permanent. And die, ultimately, despairing for the future because they've made no investment in it. The Ayn Rand Institute is of a piece with Marxist genocide, but really the genocide that it's been involved in has been much, much worse because it didn't go out of its way to kill what it said was the worst. It went out of its way to kill what it knew was the best. The Ayn Rand Institute knew that it was advocating the annihilation of the very best specimens of humanity with whom it came into contact. That they went out of their way to recruit really, really bright young children and encourage them to do the worst thing, morally the worst thing that those people will ever do in their lives. They did on the advice, at the behest of, on the encouragement of the Ayn Rand Institute. Yaron Brook, Leonard Peikoff, Ayn Rand, since deceased, dozens of other people are personally responsible for thousands upon thousands of murders. And murders not of criminals, murders not of vagrants or vagabonds, murders not of anyone. There's no human life that is not precious. There is no human life that is expendable. But there's no claim that you could make about the expendability of these children. To the contrary, they were essential to the future of human life on earth. They were essential. They were the people who will provide the means by which all of us will live better, happier, more prosperous, and more fulfilled lives. And they were murdered at the behest of Ayn Rand and her minions. And the Ayn Rand Institute needs to answer for those murders. And the last reason, there are 7 reasons here if you pick them out. I didn't divide them up all that well. But the last reason, number 7, that the Ayn Rand Institute needs to address these Planned Parenthood videos, these awful abortion videos, the reason that they need to address their own awful, erroneous, atrocious, vicious, violent, homicidal, genocidal position on intrauterine infanticide, the reason that they need to admit that they have been in error all along about abortion and recant of this awful position and make amends for it, repent of it, the reason that they need to do that is because of all of the victims of that awful sanction that Ayn Rand put on abortion. They are the victims of the sanction. She spoke of the sanction of the victim. Well, they are the victims of her sanction of abortion. And the Ayn Rand Institute needs to fix this awful error at once. This is vile. This is venomous. These people are openly, actively evil day by day by their evasion of this issue. They know they're in the wrong. They know they are engaged in intellectual evasion. They know all about evasion. Ayn Rand wrote the book on evasion, on faking reality, on telling lies to try to get out of trouble, on pretending that facts don't exist. Ayn Rand wrote the book on it. They know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly why they're in the wrong. They know exactly why they're evil. They know why they're cowards. They know why they're not doing anything, and I'm telling them why they must do it anyway. This is an error that will not stand. They must fix this. My name is Greg Swan. This is the Church of Splendor. You wouldn't know it this week. We'll get some splendor for you sometime soon. But in the meantime, thanks for joining me. Have a great day.